Zocodney. Yeah.
Zoke, okay. Zokodny, okay. Okay. Jeff Zokodny. That's correct, Zokodny?
That's right.
Ah, awesome, okay. Awesome, man. All right, if you're ready to roll, I am. We will go to 30-second countdown.
Fire away.
Jeff Slauson here from 19 News Now, the 19 News Digital Desk. Hello, everybody. For those that are unfamiliar with the disaster that has been going on with the Cleveland Guardians over the last couple of weeks here, Emmanuel Clase, we learned this week, now involved in that gambling scandal potentially here. They've extended that period that they're going to be out, and now the governor has weighed in, basically calling for prop bets in general to no longer be allowed in the state of Ohio. As we all know, gambling's very clearly a massive, massive business here. So what potentially could that be here? Losing prop bets, what does that do? We want to talk to the experts in situations like this. That's why we're very thankful to have Jeff Zokodny with us. He is the senior news analyst with Covers.com. Jeff, this is interesting because gambling in Ohio, sports gambling in Ohio has been incredibly lucrative since it was legalized. And this is now the real first stand that we've seen, at least from a politician of this caliber, to say they don't believe that it's worth the squeeze here. Your initial reaction, I guess, to the governor's announcement there?
I mean, I think it's a very serious proposal that the governor has thrown out here through the lens of legalized sports betting, because while this is aimed at props very broadly, we did see in Ohio last year the Casino Control Commission, in response to a request from the NCAA, decided to ban college player prop betting. And that is a smaller section of the broad universe of prop betting when it comes to legalized sports betting. And what the Casino Control Commission found was that these college player prop bets, again, a small subset of prop betting, they made up around 1.35% of all legalized sports betting that was going on in the state. If you expand that to prop betting for professional sports, for any sport essentially under the sun, that percentage gets much, much bigger. I don't know exactly what it would be, but it would be just a bigger, massive chunk of sports betting that goes on in Ohio on a daily, monthly, weekly basis, really.
Yeah, I had seen that sometimes it obviously depends on situations. Like the Super Bowl can be as high as, I think I had seen 30%. So it can vary player to player, team to team, league to league here. But for the most part, I'm guessing it does account for maybe not the total reason, but a large reason why people would gamble. And companies like FanDuel, any of these sports books, potentially wouldn't be happy with this being eliminated as an offering, right?
I think there will be significant pushback from the industry if this goes, if this is very seriously looked at and continued on by, the governor and by the regulator here, because you just mentioned some of the names that are involved in this space. FanDuel, DraftKings, their background is in fantasy sports where people are very engaged with players over teams. And while, this call by the governor is for props, which could be player props. It could be, first half money lines, things that are just not, that are outside of just that normal point spread, full game result outcome sort of thing. Like this could be, very sweeping in how it's applied. And I think the industry is going to push back. They did push back when it was suggested that Ohio was going to ban just college player prop betting. And again, mentioned that earlier, that was a very small percentage of overall sports betting in the state. So now when you expand it to player props, and for some people who bet on sports, that's all they're interested in. All they want to do on the Sunday, perhaps, is just bet on who's going to score a touchdown, that sort of thing. So there will be no doubt pushback from the industry on this, and we'll see now the request gets kicked over to the Casino Control Commission to do their work. They're a very serious and deep thinking regulator, so we'll see how they handle it. But yeah, this is there's bound to be some kind of, of friction from the industry on this trying to be enacted.
Yeah, I reached out to the OCCC to try and see if there was any data we could get related to this, and it does seem like there is a lot of hesitance to unveil exactly how lucrative the prop bet business actually is in the state of Ohio. They've been very, very sparse on the actual information they've given out. I think that is slightly telling here. You mentioned it. I just want to kind of hammer this point a little bit more. Talk to us a bit about how little that prop bet amount was, or at least potentially could be, for college athletics versus professional athletics. It does feel like it is a vastly different kind of ballgame there.
It is. It is. The college player prop betting markets, they're smaller than what you would see for, college football relative to NFL, for example. So when you expand to professional player props, just as an example of props, like that, those markets are much bigger. There's a lot more liquidity, aka money flowing through them, and there's a lot more interest in them from players and interest from the sportsbook operators in offering them. And when you have something like the NFL, which we're coming up on football season, and football is just king for the sports betting industry in North America, there are going to be just huge numbers of prop markets available on any given NFL game. And when you look at college player prop betting, there were college player props available in Ohio. There are college player props available in other states, but it's just not as big as when you get into professional sports for a few different reasons. One is professional sports. There's more comfort with props in general, just because these are professional athletes being compensated in a way that a Division II athlete, even some of the athletes in Division I, you just can't, it just doesn't compare. So that was one of the big concerns with college player prop betting, is that you have these athletes. There are so many of them. There are so many games going on, first of all, and then two, they're student athletes. They go to class. They're much more accessible, you could say, than perhaps a professional athlete. So there are worries about them being harassed, facing abusive comments from the crowd, facing abusive comments in class when they go to school, that sort of thing. You don't have that same level of concern for professional sports. And so you also just have, much more interest in something like the NFL relative to some college games that are going on there. And the sportsbook operators, they react to that by putting up way more betting markets for an NFL game relative to, say, a MAC football game.
Speaking again with Jeff Zuccotti, with the senior news analyst, with Covers.com. Jeff, only a few more questions for you here, but when it comes to the reasoning, at least, for what the governor's doing, you mentioned how external forces almost played an impact in the decision for the NCAA prop bets to be eliminated here. This is internal forces, essentially, right? We have two Cleveland Guardians pitchers who are placed on leave as a result of potential involvement with gambling. And that's where it comes to the integrity question that the governor brought up here. This idea of integrity, has there been legitimate information or data that has proven that there has been some sort of integrity decrease since prop bets have been allowed, not only in Ohio, but across the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, that's the million-dollar question when it comes to legalized and regulated sports betting. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg question, because before you had legalization and regulation of sports betting by the states, it was still happening in those states, just with sportsbook operators that were based overseas, offshore, outside the reach of local regulators. And so it's always hard to parse exactly what kind of pre-existing activity you had and what kind of bets were being made. But I think when you look at it, you can't just say that legalized sports betting brought about integrity concerns, because integrity concerns have existed in sports, in college and professional sports for decades, really, in connection with betting. We've seen scandals before. Where things get really kind of hard to hard to nail down is that you have now legalized and regulated sports betting that allows operators, that allows leagues to get a lot of insight into who the bettors are, to see if there is unusual betting activity going on with a certain betting market for any given game. But then you also just have these broad collection of betting markets that have popped up that can get really specific, that can get really frequent when it comes to stuff like, outcome of the next pitch in a game, outcome of the next play in a game. And so while you have this enhanced ability to oversee everything, you also have an enhanced ability for people to bet on stuff. And so it's really tricky when it comes to that when you start thinking about it that way. And then also too when you just think about how this is really still it's a nascent industry overall in Ohio. Legal sports betting only went live at the start of 2023. So you have these growing pains that are working their way through the system, and you have examples being made by leagues when they come across behavior they don't like as well. We don't know, this is what's happened with the Guardians. This is still being investigated. The players have been put on leave. We don't have all the facts yet. But just more broadly with leagues, when they have come across activity they don't like, they have not hesitated to drop the hammer, so to speak.
Yeah, it is crazy. You mentioned 2023, in basically 2 years, we have seen two potentially major changes already to it. So it is kind of interesting how the state's trying to figure it out, while at the same time these sports leagues are as well. But I mean, there's a gambling center, or at least there was a gambling center in the Guardians Stadium, so it's not like there should be any surprise that gambling and the sport have been that closely linked. It's basically a matter of time, it feels like, at this point. Jeff, you answered all my questions, man. The last thing is for how people can find you, find all the work that you do. Give yourself a quick plug if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Covers.com. We've been writing about sports betting for 3 decades now. We provide all kinds of analysis and statistics and news coverage about what's going on with sports betting, including stuff like this in Ohio. We've written about the college player prop ban when that went into effect last year. We'll be following this closely with updates. I myself have a lot of questions I'm trying to get answered on it. And when I have answers to them, I'll publish them to covers.com.
Awesome, man. And we will, of course, be waiting for that.